In the early hours of the morning, a cutter carrying women and children from the wrecked Royal Navy troopship HMS Birkenhead is rowed to safety. From a distance, they watch in horror as the officers and troops stand fast on deck, silent, at attention, as the stricken ship rapidly sinks beneath them. HMS Birkenhead is one of the first iron-hulled ships built for the Royal Navy. It's originally designed as a steam frigate, but during construction it's converted to be a troop ship. A frigate is an agile warship commonly used as an escort vessel for larger convoys. The Admiralty are uncertain of the relatively new steam power in ships and don't want to risk their fleet with an untested technology. As a troop ship, it can quickly deploy troops where needed, but won't need to fight. The ship has 12 watertight compartments separating the forward sections, the ship's machinery midship, and the aft compartments. HMS Birkenhead is designed by John Laird and built in the John Laird shipyard in Birkenhead, Lancashire. It's originally christened HMS Vulcan and launched by the Marchioness of Westminster on the 30th of December 1845. By the end of the year, it's renamed HMS Birkenhead in honor of the town where it's built. HMS Birkenhead is 64 meters in length with a beam of 11 meters and a draft of 5 meters below the waterline. The ship's powered by two Forrester & Co. 564 horsepower steam engines driving a pair of paddle wheels 6 meters in diameter with a top speed of 10 knots. The ship has a full complement of sails, and the steam engines provide additional maneuverability and speed. The ship's manned by a crew of 125 officers and men. HMS Birkenhead sails its maiden voyage from Birkenhead to the Royal Navy base in Plymouth, Devon in 1846. It's in service for 5 years before it's laid up in Plymouth, where it's refitted before going back into service. In January 1852, under the command of Captain Robert Salmond, HMS Birkenhead sails from Portsmouth bound for Algoa Bay on the east coast of South Africa. On board are troops belonging to 10 different British Army regiments. The troops will reinforce British forces fighting the 8th Xhosa War against the indigenous Xhosa tribes of the Eastern Cape region of South Africa. On the 5th of January, Birkenhead calls at Queenstown in Ireland to pick up more troops, as well as the wives and families of several of the officers on board. After 6 weeks at sea, Birkenhead docks in Simonstown in False Bay on the morning of the 23rd of February. The Royal Navy took over the harbour at Simonstown in the 1790s to build out a naval base which still exists today under the South African Navy. Most of the women and children on board disembark, together with several troops who have become ill during the voyage. During their stay in Simonstown, 9 cavalry horses, several bales of hay, and 35 tons of coal are taken on board in preparation for the last leg of the voyage to Algoa Bay. This last leg is around 450 nautical miles and will take 2 days to sail. At 1800, on the 25th of February, in clear skies and calm seas, Birkenhead set sail for Algoa Bay with between 630 and 643 men, women, and children on board. The exact number isn't recorded. In order to make the best possible speed, Captain Salmond decides to hug the coastline, setting a course that will keep Birkenhead approximately 3 miles off the coast. On the voyage south from Plymouth, Birkenhead sailed against the Benguela Current. Sailing up the east coast of southern Africa, it faces the Mozambique Current. These standing ocean currents are most powerful in deep water. Closer to land, the currents encounter resistance from the land in shallower water, which slows them down. And so it's easier to sail against the current in shallower water while hugging the coastline. Just before 0200 on the 26th of February, Birkenhead is making 8.5 knots while passing Danger Point off the coast of Gansbaai. The leadsman in the bow takes a depth sounding. There's 22 meters of water beneath Birkenhead's bow. When sailing at night, the land might not be visible, and so one way to navigate is to follow a depth contour. The The leadsman takes regular depth soundings by dropping a weighted rope and counting the number of knots in the rope between the ship and the seabed. If the depth gets shallower, they turn the ship out to sea, and if the depth gets deeper, they turn back to land. Before the leadsman can make his next sounding, Birkenhead strikes an uncharted rock, 3.7 meters below the bow. In stormy weather, when waves have high crests and deep troughs, the rock can be seen clearly in the rough waves. But in these calm conditions, the long swell rolls slowly and is neither high nor deep, so the rocks are hidden below the waterline. Captain Salmond rushes on deck, orders the anchor dropped, the quarter boats to be lowered, and one turn astern of the engines. As the ship backs off, the sea rushes in through the large hole created from striking the rock. The long rolling swell pushes Birkenhead forward and it strikes again, buckling the plate of the forward bilge and ripping open the forward bulkheads. The forward compartment and the engine room flood. Over 100 troopers sleeping below deck are drowned in their bunks. The surviving officers, men, women and children assemble on deck. Captain Salmond orders Lieutenant Colonel Seaton, the senior military officer aboard, to send men to man the bilge pumps. 60 men are assigned to the pumps, 60 to man the lifeboat tackles, and the remaining men assemble on the poop deck towards the back of the ship in an effort to lower the stern and in turn raise the bow. The women and children are placed in the ship's cutter, which is lying alongside. Captain Salmond orders 2 further large boats, each capable of carrying 150 people, to be launched. The first is immediately swamped and lost, while the second can't be launched because the tackle blocks haven't been maintained and the ropes don't run through them. This leaves only the cutter and 3 small lifeboats to take men aboard. The surviving officers and men now assemble on the poop deck, where Lieutenant Colonel Seaton calls for his officers and men to maintain discipline and order. Everyone is silent. The only sounds in the air are Captain Salmond quietly reminding his men to stay calm, the horses kicking on deck, and a small swell rolling up on the side of the ship. 10 minutes after Birkenhead first strikes the rock, with the engine still going astern, Birkenhead strikes the rock a third and final time, tearing open the bottom plates. The ship breaks in two just behind the main mast. The funnel collapses and goes overboard. The forepart of the ship sinks rapidly. The stern section, now heavily crowded with men, begins to flounder and sink. Captain Salmond calls out, "All who can swim, jump overboard and swim for the boats." Lieutenant Colonel Seaton realizes that order will cause a rush for the cutter and the 3 small lifeboats, which risks swamping them, endangering the lives of the women and children. He orders all troops to stand fast. Only 3 troopers break ranks and swim for the cutter. The 9 cavalry horses are released and driven into the sea. One breaks its leg and is quickly killed by great white sharks. The other 8 make it safely to shore. Gansbaai is one of the world's great white shark hotspots. The cold Benguela current and the warm Mozambique current collide in this region, both bringing a supply of nutrients that filter up the food chain. These African great white sharks feed predominantly on the large seal population in the area and are happy to supplement that diet with a few British soldiers if the opportunity presents itself. The soldiers and their surviving officers stand fast, not moving as the Birkenhead sinks beneath them, barely 20 minutes after striking the rock. Some soldiers do manage to swim the 2 miles to shore. Many drown, die of exposure, or are killed by the frenzied great white sharks. Early the next day, the schooner Lioness discovers the cutter, takes on board the women and children, as well as survivors from one of the small lifeboats, then heads for Birkenhead's location. Arriving in the afternoon, Lioness finds 40 survivors clinging to Birkenhead's rigging and takes them on board. The total number of persons aboard the Birkenhead at the time of the disaster has always been uncertain. An estimate of 638 is published in the Times newspaper in London. The survivors consist of 113 soldiers of all ranks, 6 Royal Navy Marines, 54 sailors of all ranks, 7 women, 13 children and 1 civilian. A total of 194 men, women and children. 444 men died. The traditional wooden naval ships at the time, or a ship designed without watertight bulkhead compartments, would have broken up more quickly and the death toll would likely have been higher. The stronger metal gave some protection from the rock, and the watertight bulkheads slowed the flooding, which gave the crew enough time to evacuate some of the survivors. Several sailors are court-martialed aboard HMS Victory in Portsmouth on the 8th of May 1852. The court case generated an enormous amount of interest from the British public. Because none of Birkenhead's senior officers survived the accident, no one is held responsible. A lighthouse standing 18 meters tall with a light that's visible for 25 nautical miles out to sea was built at Danger Point in 1895. In 1936, a remembrance plate to the Birkenhead was affixed to the base of the lighthouse by the Naval League of South Africa. The discipline and valor of the officers and troops aboard Birkenhead, together with the decision to place the women and children in the cutter before anyone else, has led to what is now known as the Birkenhead drill, or more commonly accepted as women and children first. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and would like to watch more videos from this channel without any ads, please consider joining our Patreon. The link is in the description. You can join for free or select a membership with benefits ranging from ad-free videos through to early access and live Q&A calls. I look forward to meeting you there.